I remember the first time I sat down, like maybe coming home after like the 5th photo shoot I ever did, and I downloaded Lightroom onto my computer and I opened it up, and I remember I was absolutely blown away by the power and the control that I had over post-production of my images. I was absolutely blown away. I couldn't believe how well or how much I could edit my images. It blew my mind. Since then, I've definitely become more of a Photoshop editor. Despite this though, I still believe that, at least for the majority of you, that Lightroom is the only tool that you're going to need to run your freelance photography business, or even just edit your own images to post to Instagram. And I genuinely don't believe that I would be the editor that I am today. I don't think I would have the skill or the tools, or I don't think I'd have the knowledge that I have today if I didn't start out by learning the basics in Lightroom. So today I'm going to bring you guys 10 things that everybody needs to know when opening up Lightroom. So with that all out of the way, let's get into tip number 1. Tip number 1 is auto-tune. There is a button in Lightroom that edits your images automatically for you. Yes, I know, I had the exact same look on my face the first time I found out about this. I know, there is a button that does it all for you. To do this, what you're going to do is you're going to head into Lightroom and you're going to go up to your basic adjustments panel and hit this little button here. What this is going to do is it's automatically going to edit the basic adjustment sliders within Lightroom. Now, this isn't going to edit your images completely. This is by no means a point that you should finish your edit at, but it is a fantastic way if you are brand new to Lightroom for you to begin to learn what each individual slider, especially within the basic effects panel, does to your image. Or maybe you're just lazy and you can't be bothered using the basic adjustment sliders and you want it to do it automatically. Tip number 2 is a way to reset individual sliders within Lightroom. How many of you have been 20 to 30 minutes into an edit and you've sort of been going with it and haven't really been thinking, and suddenly you sit back and realize that you've overdone it. It's not really looking that great. It's looking a little bit too intense. You've overdone it, to say the least. So what you need to do is go and individually slide these sliders back to 0, and maybe you go a little bit under, or maybe go a little bit over. Oh, there we go, perfect, on 0. That's a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna lie, it's a pain in the ass. So what's an easy way to do this? Well, what you're gonna do is, instead of sliding these all the way back, what you're gonna do is you're gonna double click on the individual effect, and that'll automatically bring that slider back to 0. Easy as that. You can also go ahead and toggle on and off individual panels by hitting this little button here to give yourself an idea of what each individual thing is doing to your image as a whole. Tip number 3. Now this one absolutely changed my life. This is seriously the best thing about Lightroom. It's one of my favorite things to do when I finish editing an image, and this is to double tap L to get a full, completely uninterrupted view of your image. Simply by double tapping L, and you can sort of sit back and go, yeah, I like it, I don't really like it, maybe I like this about it. Give yourself a real view, uninterrupted view of your image without having to have any of the panels or sliders or anything like that in the image. You just get your computer and the image. It can be a really, really good way to assess your image. If your background isn't white, what you can do is go up to Lightroom, down to Preferences, over to the interface, and then in the Lights Out option, what you're going to do is change it from black, which is the default, down to white. You can also change the dim level, so this is the level that happens when you hit L once. This is an amazing tip for just really giving yourself a better view of your images and sitting back and just going, yeah, I like it, maybe I don't, maybe I've overdone it, maybe it's perfect. It's a really, really good way to assess your images as a whole. Tip number 4 is the before and after button. I know, there's a before and after button. When I first found out about this, it blew my mind.
I'm saying this about every single one of these fucking tools. Every single one of these tools blew my mind the first time I found out about them. So just take that as an automatic for every single one of these panels. But
tip number 4 is the before and after button. Now, how many of you have started out in Lightroom and you couldn't understand why there's not just a little switch that gives you a quick before and after, and you're hitting reset, and then you're like that, and you're hitting Command Z to go back to your edit, and it's just a roundabout fucking annoying way. Well, what if I told you that there's a button on your keyboard that automatically shows you a before and after? It'd probably blow your mind, right? Yeah, well, it's the dash button that I'm going to have overlaid on the screen here. You tap that once, it'll go before, you tap it again, and it'll go back to your edited image. This seriously changed my life when I first found out about this. I swear, I don't think I knew for the first year that I was using Lightroom that there was a before and after button. I was using that roundabout way of resetting my image and then hitting Command Z to bring it back to a point that I could see my edited image. I know, it's a pain in the ass, but we got there in the end. Tip number 5 is local adjustments. I genuinely believe that using local adjustments is the single best way to add more individuality with your images or make them feel a little bit more unique. Because when you're using Lightroom, everyone has access to the same sliders, everyone can do the same thing. There's not really too much to differentiate yourself from someone else. But when you begin to use local adjustments, well, you enter a whole new realm of unlimited possibilities. It's arguably the one thing that I saw and I was like, okay, I need to start using Photoshop. So if you want to use these, 2 little things that I really recommend. It's a whole world. I could make an entire video on local adjustments, but 2 ways that I really like to use them is 1, to emphasize a light source and to create more controllable vignettes. You can do this by going over to this button here. You're then going to pull a circle. Say I want to focus the viewer's attention on my face. What I can do is make sure it's set to here, bring the feather all the way up, invert it and I can hit O on my keyboard to see where this circle is affecting, and then maybe I can bring that exposure up a little bit to bring a little bit more attention to me. And then if I want to create a vignette, I can go to new and I can drag that over the bottom of the image. See what it's affecting. Let's bring the feather up a little bit more. Let's bring it down a little bit more. And then I can drop this exposure to create a nice vignette around the bottom of the image. That way it's created this nice focal point in my image. I can hit the little toggle button like I taught you to show what that's affecting and what it's not affecting. It's a really, really good, simple way to really make your images pop. And the second way I like to use it is with local dodging and burning on my portraits. Say you want to make someone's eyes pop in a portrait. All you need to do for this is select the paintbrush tool, go over here to the exposure button. I like to add a little bit of exposure, a little bit of highlights, and maybe a little bit of clarity and texture, and then I can go in and I can paint on the eyes to create this nice feel. Again, hitting O to see what it's affecting, go in, paint over the eyes, nice and quickly, maybe add a little bit more of exposure, and then if we zoom out and we toggle on and off, hasn't made a huge difference, but it's a nice little touch that you can add to your portraits to really begin to make them feel unique and make them pop. Tip number 6 is how to apply one edit to multiple images. Say you've just finished a shoot where you were shooting in very similar circumstances. Say it's sunrise and all the images have a very similar vibe to them, and you've got an edit that you're really, really happy with and you want to test that edit across multiple images. All you need to do this is you need to make sure that your image is highlighted, the image that you want to use the edit on, and then you're going to select, holding shift, the images that you want to add the edit to. Once they're selected, all you're going to do is go over here to the sync button, press the adjustments that you want to add, press synchronize, and what that'll do is that'll add that edit to multiple images. Alternatively, what you can do is you can right click on your image, you're going to go over to settings, go down to copy settings, again select the edits that you want to copy, and then what you can do is you can go over and select, say, if I reset this, you can right click, go to settings, and then select paste settings to add that edit to any individual images. Tip number 7 is organize your images. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I'm an absolute sucker for organization, and this doesn't change once I get into Lightroom. Whenever I finish a shoot and I bring it into Lightroom, the first thing I always do is give my photos a rating of either 0 or 5. You can do this by going through your images and hitting 5 on the ones that you like and keeping the ones at 0 that you don't like. What this will do is then allow you to separate those images, the good ones and the bad ones, into rating setups. What I do once I've done that is I pick my images that I am desperate to edit. Say I'm looking through a set of 100 images and I've rated 20 at 5, and then I've got 3 in there that I'm like, I need to edit these straight away. What I'll do is I'll go through and I'll hit P on my keyboard to flag that image, and then later on what I can do is I can go over to this little button over here and I can select flagged images, and what this will do is it'll just select my images that I've flagged in my catalog or in that particular set of images, and I can go through and edit my absolute favorites. And then once I've done editing those, I can go through and edit the ones that are rated at 5. I promise you, if you start doing this now, yourself in a year from now is going to only thank you tenfold, because looking at a catalog that has thousands and thousands of images and it's got 0 organization
Is a fucking nightmare.
So I promise you right now, please start doing some stuff to organize your Lightroom catalog. Tip number 8 is clipping. I want you to go into Lightroom, select your image that you're editing, and I want you to hit this little guy up here. If you see nothing come up, great, fantastic. You're an awesome editor and you have a good eye. if you do see something come up, that still means you're an awesome editor, but it just means you just need to make a couple adjustments. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go over to the exposure panel and you're gonna crank that all the way up, and notice how the red starts to come out here. That means your image is overexposed in those areas. If I click this little button here and I bring that exposure all the way down, you'll notice that some blue areas start to show up in the areas that are underexposed. This is just a great way to keep a track of your edit and make sure you're not overexposing or underexposing on either end, and begin to really edit your images well. Or maybe you've got intentions to eventually print your images. If you want the quality of your prints to be top notch, you need to make sure that your images aren't clipping, and it's going to be a pain in the ass if you have to go back after the fact and make sure all of your individual print images aren't clipping. The best way to do this is just make sure that you're not clipping any of your images straight off the bat, and you won't have to worry about this. Tip number 9 is resize your panels to suit your particular workspace. For me, or with Lightroom in general, it comes standard with this panel really small. I think it looks something like that when it first comes out of the box, and it also comes with this panel up here out and this panel out here out to start off with. Now, personally, I prefer to work, especially with my big monitor, I prefer to work with this panel stretched out as far as I can. This gives me so much more control with these sliders over here. I've got a lot more distance than, say, if I had it like this. It's a lot harder to move small amounts and see what my panels are actually doing. So I make sure this is all the way out, and then I also remove the top and the bottom panel to make sure that they only appear when I hover over them. And to do this, you're just gonna hit this arrow up here to make it disappear, and this arrow down here to make it disappear. And then if you wanna bring it back out again, all you need to do is hover your mouse over that area, or hover your mouse over this bottom area, and that'll bring that back up again. I like to work with my space as uninterrupted as possible, so I can really focus on my individual images. And tip number 10 is create some of your own presets that you can begin to use in certain circumstances. Say you're a wedding shooter and you want to start to edit all your weddings in a similar way, or say you just want to add more of a theme or a style to your Instagram images, or you've just finished a shoot and all the images feel very similar and you want to use the same edit on all of those images. What you can do to do this is you're going to go up to this preset panel over here and you're going to press create presets. This will bring up this panel here and you can name that whatever you want. Select the settings that you want to use. I prefer to keep individual settings out of my presets. Say for example with local adjustments, I'll make sure those are turned off, and then I'll also make sure that white balance is turned off, because if you're shooting in RAW, each individual image is going to have its own white balance value depending on the circumstances you're shooting. So I like to keep those completely out of my presets, so I'm not throwing it onto an image, sitting back and wondering why the fuck it looks the way it does. So all you need to do from that is create the preset, and then that'll come up over here in your user presets panel. It's a great way to start to add some consistency into your images. I really like to use them for my professional work. So say if I'm shooting in a gym and I've just finished the shoot and they've really liked, say, a past set of images, I can just go ahead, throw the preset that I used in those images onto these images, and bang, the client is happy. They really like the edit. All the images look the same. My portfolio is looking super consistent and really nice, and it's a great way to add some consistency and make your theme really represent your brand well. Also, if you want to grab any of my presets, I'll have those linked in the description below. It's entirely up to you. You don't need to grab them, but if you are interested at all, they're always linked in the description below. That is my 10 tips for Lightroom that I think everyone should know straight off the bat. If you're brand new to Lightroom, or if you're an advanced Lightroom user, I hope this video was valuable in some way. If you guys want to see me create one of these videos for Photoshop, because I am interested in creating a 10 tip sort of basics or hacks video for Photoshop, if you guys want to see that happen, let's get this video to 150 likes and I'll make that happen at some point. But if you did enjoy this video, if you've enjoyed any of my videos on my channel, I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. But as always, it's entirely up to you, and I'll see you guys next time.